The HOA president snuck through my laundry room window when my 10-year-old slept behind a locked door. She referred to it as a midnight compliance sweep. The only thing she field-tested that night was the system I had in place to protect him. Here's what happened. That kind of midnight stillness has a form, the quiet after the world finally tires for the evening. Jake, 10, rough for his age, my Sunday practice buddy, was sprawled out in a mustard camp t-shirt, sneakers flung by the door. I sat in my faded leather chair, laptop open on the ottoman but unattended. This was my turn now. It had been for 2 years since Sarah passed away. She filled the home with laughter and humming and the little sounds that give a place life. Now silence was something I could do. I stood watch over it. My watch buzzed at 2:14 a.m., not an alarm, a single subtle vibration connected to the sensor web I'd created. My eyes were already open. I didn't flinch. I just straightened. Adrenaline gets you careless. I had my system programmed to prevent it. A small code flashed on the screen. LNDW1, Laundry Room Window Sensor 1. The magnetic seal had been compromised. I execute diagnostics daily at 10. This was not a drill. I shut the laptop quietly. My actions were methodical. IT guy muscle memory for moving like a ghost. Navy t-shirt, jeans, bare feet on cool wood. Fear and sorrow teach different things. The police taught me the rest. When the trouble comes to your door, you're the only help you can rely on. They described our situation as a civil matter. Sarah would have despised what I'd done to the house. She adored sunlight and open windows. Now, each window boasted a secondary pin that she would have described as ugly. Doors were reinforced with them. The attractive outside shutters were empty decorations. The actual steel plates hid behind the drywall, ready to be called forth. She would have declared I let fear dominate. She did not get to witness the glances Jake received selling us on the block or to open the bi-weekly violation letters from our HOA president, Karen Blackman. Karen patrolled our patch of suburbia as if it was hers. A widow cop turned neighbor's watcher who used rules as weapons, she singled out anyone she did not get along with. A quiet son and widowed father. A garden in disarray because I was too exhausted to weed it. A basketball hoop 2 inches too near the sidewalk. Trivial things. Petty things fermented with her. I stood barefoot in silence. The system was passive by design, to observe, to document, not to proclaim. Alarms beg for chaos. Silent sensors provide an edge. I moved through the blackness like a map that I'd memorized, each creak of floorboard, each protesting board. I skirted Jake's door. Rousing him was the most difficult part, more than the price of equipment, more than countless nights soldering and writing code. Taking 1 minute of his serene slumber to cope with the world tightened my stomach. A pinprick of red light emanated on the security panel tucked behind a painting. LNDW1 confirmed. My fingers located the tablet on the hall table. The laundry room feed flowered in low-light gray. The window was open. A form moved. She opened the pane and belly crawled in, slow, cautious. They believed themselves to be quiet. They were not aware the house had already said everything it needed to say to me. My scheme, constructed brick by brick and proven until the edges became indistinct, went live. The intruder was within, and I was prepared. I drew one deepening breath. This was not rage. It was conclusion, a last impenetrable line. This was over tonight. I knew who he was. I'd been holding on for a week since I'd sent her most recent notice of violation back with a small present concealed in the crease. A rice grain-sized tracker. She couldn't help herself. Power is a craving that can never be satiated. She had to pressure. She believed she was the one in charge. She was mistaken. She had entered a box that I held the key to. I flipped on the mic on my pocket cam. "This is David Mercer, LNDW1, timestamp live." The stove clock flipped over 2:14 to 2:15. I breathed. "Sarah, keep him safe," and slipped on nitrile gloves. I didn't want dye prints contaminating Jake's world. From the tablet, I observed a sleeve, then a knee. She belly crawled like a cat that owns the counter. Predator thought she was silent. I inhaled for the recording. She didn't. I wedged a piece of wood under the hallway door so it wouldn't squeak. The house was familiar with my weight. I worked around the 2 noisy boards. A faraway train horn outside. Inside, only my breath. I held up the tablet to the laundry cam. If I go down, this goes up. I told him, not for theatrics, for clarity, thumb poised over lock. Another step, one more invasion, and the box shuts. I approached Jake's door, slow and controlled. Checklist running through my mind. Camera feeds online, backups active, network secure. But first, Jake. We had a different protocol. No shouting. I flattened my hand against his door and knocked twice. A gentle, consistent beat. Thump. Pause. 21:16 a.m. Panic pad against the wall. He locked his door and hid like we practiced. No questions. Act. For one heartbeat, nothing. Then the sound of blankets, the flip of his lamp. He was awake. At 10 years old, he had a more effective emergency strategy than most adults. Pride filled and made him sick. Our conflict with Karen started small. Grass a quarter-inch too long, the wrong color mailbox, the brand of garbage can. Paper cuts that multiplied themselves. Once Sarah died, the notices increased. My garden, Sarah's garden were targeted. The swing I'd installed for Jake was in violation of a bylaw regarding temporary structures. Each week, a new letter, another fine, another warning. I'd tried reason with her. I'd attended an HOA meeting, told her that I was a single parent doing my best. Human decency must mean something. She sat at the head of the table, expression a bureaucratic mask. Rules are rules. 20 years a cop, loved reminding people. Her order tasted like punishment. It got worse when I added a doorbell camera. She sent me a notice that it was against community aesthetics. I read the bylaws. No such ordinance. I replied, cited the sections, informed her the camera remained. And then the inspection started. She'd stand on the sidewalk just beyond our line and take notes for an hour at a time. Anonymous tips to child services followed. They knocked, took a gander around, saw a tidy house and a healthy boy, and left with apologies. The police followed that. She'd call noise disturbances when we watched a movie, report an unfamiliar car when my brother visited. They recognized her. "Hey, Karen," they'd say. To me, "Sir, we have a report." They'd drive around my block and warn me to be quiet. When I attempted to illustrate a pattern, they shrugged. "She's the HOA president, sir. It's a civil matter." That 5-word phrase flipped everything on its head. A nice way of telling you you're on your own. So I treated it like I was. I make networks secure for a living. I secured my residence. Improved locks, strengthened frames, quiet magnetic sensors on all the doors and windows. Not the screaming ones, but subtle pulses to my closed-loop server. Steel shutters inside controlled by a tablet. Security fog system from England, heavy, disorienting vapor that fills a room in a matter of seconds. Non-toxic and blinding. UV dye. Invisible gel that adheres to skin and clothing, radiating under black light. I applied it on the inside grips and laundry latch. Marine batteries ran everything, independent of the grid, shut down the power, and my system became more powerful. The final component was Jake. We practiced every Sunday. His task: lock his core door, deadbolt it, enter the closet with its reinforced door, pick up the battery walkie, wait for my okay. He detested it. He referred to it as a game. He knew why. I heard the deadbolt thud from within his room. Good boy. The tablet displayed the intruder in full. A crisp white blouse, dark wash jeans, moving with ex-cop confidence, not stealth but arrogance. Flashlight in her left hand, zip ties in her right. She wasn't there to take towel measurements. She'd come armed with restraint. My cameras, pinhole lenses concealed in smoke alarms and outlets, all wired into a hardwired camera box bolted in my office. No Wi-Fi to Sapuena, no cloud. Just undeniable evidence. She swept the light across the washer and dryer, across tidy piles of towels. The smug surprise in her face was something I could have heard. She scouted for grime, some excuse. She tried the door from the mudroom to the kitchen. Breaking out a leather case from her pocket, she extracted lockpicks. The tumblers rolled. She'd done this before. How many other homes? How many others? The lock gave way with a soft snick, and she smiled, thin and victorious. She flowed into the kitchen. That was when I talked. Not a yell, but a steady knife. "That's far enough, Karen." She stopped in her tracks. The flashlight blazed. "Who are you?" She barked, attempting authority but tinged with shock. "David Mercer," I told her. "You're in my home." Her ex-cop stance swayed to the bluff she knew. "I'm performing an emergency inspection. As president of the HOA, I have a right of entry." A pathetic fabrication. 2:16 a.m. emergency inspection with lockpicks and zip ties. She uttered it as if power could warp reality. "You have no such right," I replied. "You broke into my lock. I have you on tape." Her chin jerked up. "Stand back." She attempted the active mode bluff. Failure to obey becomes obstruction. I kept the lens still. Failure to depart becomes burglary. Her eyes flicked to the corner ceilings. "Concealed devices are in violation of privacy laws." "Not in my living room," I told her. "You know that." Pause. Her falsehood weighed heavy. "Where is the boy?" She demanded. "Safe," I replied. "And taped." I tilted the tablet so the red recording square dominated the frame. "Your turn." Fear flashed across her face. The word camera hit her like a blunt object. She searched the room for lenses, cornered in the only house on the block waiting for her. Her authority was lost. Her lie was abandoned. That's where you cease being the predator and become the prey. I glanced back at the tablet in my hand. The woman in the laundry room was completely inside now, wearing a creased white blouse and dark wash jeans, moving with ex-cop confidence. Not sneaking, just arrogance. It was Karen Blackman. She was carrying a small flashlight and a bunch of thick zip ties. She wasn't here to take a grass measurement. She had passed the line. She had taken her battle into my house from the area my son slept in, and she was unaware that it was not she who was laying the trap. It was game over. This was real life. Karen strode on the screen of the tablet as if she was the boss. It was an arrogance born from decades of wearing a badge and thinking the rules didn't apply to you. She believed she was invisible, a hunter moving unseen through the darkness of an unsuspecting house. She was mistaken. My camera did see everything. I had set them up myself. Small pinhole lenses disguised as smoke detectors in electrical outlets in the edge of the ceiling. They plugged in a closed loop connected to a camera box secured inside a steel box in my office. No Wi-Fi connection to hack, no cloud storage to subpoena, just cold, irrefutable evidence. She moved the small, high-intensity flashlight beam around the laundry room. The beam cut a bright white slash through the shadows. It passed over the washer, the dryer, the tidy piles of folded towels. I could have heard her thoughts, the superior shock that a bachelor's home could be so neat. She was searching for something. Filth, a motive, some pretext she could fabricate later for being in my house. She stood there, her head tilted, attentive to the quiet. It must have seemed blissful to her. The middle of the night, the house quiet and still, the father and son in her head helpless and asleep. The zip ties in her hand were the most incriminating thing. Why would an HOA president conducting a supposed inspection at 2 in the morning need a group of heavy-duty plastic restraints? There was no innocent explanation for it. She had come to provoke, to bully, to do something that would destroy us completely. I remained in the hallway, hidden, leaning against the chilly plaster of the wall. My own breathing was the most intense sound in my universe, sluggish and measured. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like a soldier before battle, a father before he must defend his son. I stood and watched her on the tablet as she went from the laundry room into the little connecting mudroom. She was trying the door knob into the kitchen, locked, naturally. She didn't appear shocked. She must have figured it. She leaned into her pocket and drew out a small leather wallet, a set of lockpicks. Seeing it gave me a shiver of confirmation that chilled me. This was not a deciding impulse kind of thing. This was deliberated, calculated. She had arrived armed with intent to burglarize my house room by room if need be. This was the evidence I wanted. The type of evidence the local police could not brush aside as a civil offense. This was a felony videotaped occurring live. She bent down, the light from her flashlight on the keyhole. She was a professional. The tumblers fell into place softly, one by one. She had done this before. The realization sent a chill down her spine. How many other houses? How many other households had she terrorized with such midnight raids? Who else in our otherwise peaceful neighborhood was targeted by her? The lock creaked open with a quiet snick. She grinned. I could see it plainly on the monitor. A thin, victorious smile in the gray light of the camera. It was the grin of a bully who had finally prevailed. She rose, slowly opening the door. She entered the kitchen, and that's when I said something. My voice wasn't a shout. It was quiet, matter of fact, but it sliced through the quiet like a knife. That's far enough, Karen. She stopped. Her whole body stiffened. The beam of the flashlight sprang up wildly, probing the blackness. It blasted past my location in the hall, a blinding white flash. She couldn't see me, but she knew I was present. "Who's there?" She snapped back at me, voice attempting authority but laced with a quiver of shock. "It's David Mercer," I replied, maintaining calm. "You're in my home. Karen Blackman, former cop and HOA president. You can't enter." The light caught up with me. And pinned me back against the wall. I didn't move. I simply remained there, letting her view me. Letting her view that I was not afraid. "Why are you here?" she demanded, quickly regaining her composure. The former police officer in her kicked in. There'd been a report of a water leak. "I'm making an emergency inspection. As Homeowners Association president, I have the right of entry." It was a weak fabrication, and we both knew it. A 2:16 a.m. emergency inspection with lockpicks and zip ties. It was ridiculous, but she threatened it deadpan, convinced her title was a shield against reality itself. "You have no such right, Karen," I replied calmly. "You entered my house. You picked my lock. I have you on camera." She raised her chin. "Stand back, David. I'm in active surveillance mode." "Of what? My towels?" "Emergency code compliance. At 2:16 a.m. Her lips curled. "Some violations have deadlines. Like gravity," I said, "because it's going to drop on you." She took a step, testing my resolve. Non-compliance becomes obstruction. I kept the lens stable. Non-withdrawal becomes burglary. Her eyes darted to the ceiling corners. "Concealed devices infringe on privacy laws." "Not in my own living room," I said. "You know that." A pause of silence. The lie on her lips seemed to weigh on her. "Where's the boy?" "Safe," I said, and left the words hanging between us like a closed door. "And taped." Her jaw snapped into place. "Last warning." "Same," I said, and shifted the tablet so the red square filled the frame. "Your move." For the first time, a flash of real fear flickered over her face. The term camera struck home. She surveyed the ceiling, the walls, her eyes racing round, seeking out the lenses. She was trapped. She had entered the one house on the street prepared for her. Her deception had failed. Her power was lost, and in that instant she had to decide. She could give up or she could double down. Based on everything I knew about her, I was fairly certain which it would be, Karen decided. Her face went hard, the momentary flash of fear obliterated by a familiar face of angry defiance. The flashlight in her hand wasn't looking ahead anymore. It was a club. She stepped towards me into the rest of the house. That was the final provocation. My thumb rested over the master icon on my tablet screen, a plain red box titled Lock. I had worked for months constructing this system, creating it to be a fortress that didn't appear to be. It was a series of defense mechanisms intended to hold in, not to kill, to preserve, not to destroy. It was time to find out if all my scheming, all my paranoia had been worth it. "You have no evidence," she growled, advancing another step. Her voice was low and threatening. She was trying to scare me, relying on the old bully tricks that had served her so well for so long. She was mistaken. Evidence was one thing I had plenty of. I pressed the red square. The impact was instantaneous and complete. The low, menacing growl from behind the walls. The whine of heavy-duty electric motors disengaging. Then the movement of the shutters. It wasn't a clatter. It was a thick, heavy thud, one after another in rapid succession. Thump, the window to the living room. Thump, the dining room. Throughout the house, the concealed one-in-thick steel plates glided along their tracks, closing off all the windows and glass doors. The house was thrown into complete pitch-black darkness. Karen screamed out, a piercing gasp of horror and surprise. Her beam of light, which had been trained on me, now wildly scanned the room, finding only solid steel where there once was glass and vistas of the sleeping street. She was trapped in with me. "What did you do?" she screamed, her voice at last cracking. The command vanished, replaced by raw, hysterical rage. But I wasn't done yet. A second command was already on its way. From vents discreetly installed in the ceiling, a heavy white mist started to hiss into the room. It wasn't smoke. It was a heavy glycol-based vapor, completely safe to breathe, but precisely engineered to be so heavy you couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. It billowed out, engulfing her flashlight beam and scattering it into a useless, blinding white light. In a matter of seconds, the kitchen and living room were full of an impenetrable cloud. She was blind. She began to cough, not from any irritant, but from shock and from the thickness of the fog. She stepped backward and fell into a kitchen chair. She stretched out, attempting to navigate back to the door of the mudroom, back to where she came in. Her hand encountered the doorknob she had selected just seconds before. She grasped it, turned it, and in the process, she activated the third and most refined level of my trap. The doorknob, as the laundry window latch had done previously, was covered with a thin, clear gel, a powerful ultraviolet dye. It was odorless, colorless, and unremovable with hasty washing. It was all over her hands now. Proof that would shine like a specter fire in a black light. Proof that would directly connect her to the two entry points she had employed in order to intrude upon my residence. I remained absolutely still in the hallway just beyond the center cloud of mist. I heard her shifting, colliding with objects, her breathing becoming hoarse, frantic gasps. She was totally lost. The power dynamic had reversed itself in the span of 5 seconds. She had entered as predator, the one in charge. Now she was trapped, blind, and branded. The hunter had been turned into the prey, caught not through violence but through simplistic, unavoidable technology. She was a problem that had been contained. The system had worked. Each sensor, each motor, each line of code had functioned precisely as I'd programmed it. Sarah would have despised this cage I'd constructed. But there in the darkness, hearing the man who'd terrorized my family, now fumbling blindly through my kitchen, I knew I'd done the right thing. My son was safe behind a locked door. The danger was neutered. The final section of the plan was set to start. The section that would ensure this could never, ever happen again. All I had to do now was gain everyone's attention. I activated the third button on the tablet. The siren was the exact opposite of my quiet sensors. It was made for one thing to be heard. It wasn't hooked into the main power of the house. It was powered by its own deep cycle battery, the sort used on boats, and it was noisy, a shrill, constant scream that broke the suburban silence. I had tried it once out in the sticks, and even with earplugs it hurt. In the house it was ear-splitting. It was a warning to the whole neighborhood that something was seriously, seriously wrong at the Mercer residence. I made it whine for a full 10 seconds, a wailing notice that the game was done. Then I shut it off. The panic pad transmitted a silent signal. This siren was my trigger wake-up for witnesses. The silence snapped back, rubber band-like. For an instant, I could perceive separate sounds distinct in stack. The tick of the stove clock, the distant whir of a fan thrusting fog, the ragged drag of Karen's breath as she felt her way along the kitchen cabinets. A drawer rasped open. Metal clashed, not knives, measuring spoons. She cursed under her breath, then rammed into the pantry door. It bumped, denied her. She rammed again. Anger, not skill. Another bump. Karen, I said, my voice steady, the pocket camera held high. You're contained and recorded. Do not escalate. She replied with a flash beam stabbed blindly through the fog. It sputtered off the stainless refrigerator and expired 2F tuck away, swallowed whole. She swiveled to the rear of the house, probing the slider by habit. Her palm hit steel rather than glass. The shutter made a deep, contented thump, like a vault door exhaling. She spat and retreated into the island. A mixing bowl clanged, skittered, landed on the floor. I wrote it out loud for the mic. Metal strike, island side, 219. Above, the return vent buzzed. I'd put the air handler on circulate, not purge, to maintain the fog in suspension. The grayed around her. She coughed once, twice, shock, not chemical, and continued on. She located the mudroom once more by touch, then the door or knob she'd selected. Twist. Another UV smear. Good. With each decision she made, the same picture grew brighter. I moved 2 steps to the left, holding my position in the lane I'd memorized between the groaning boards, aligning the crosshairs on the tablet with the heat halo on the low-light feed. Final warning, I told her. Lie down. Keep your hands where I can see them. You can't see anything, she spat, breath close, anger and fear braided together. I see enough, I replied and touched the tablet. A ceiling puck struggled to life, 2 brief flashes that froze her in silhouette for still photos. She jerked, throwing an arm too late. The pictures stamped themselves with time, place, and stance. Documentation, not domination. The house continued to tell the truth. She attempted a new move, shut off the power. Her nails scraped at the hallway panel screws. She ripped off the lid, anticipating breakers, but discovered nothing recognizable. Marine batteries encased, marked locked. Her breath caught. She slammed the panel closed and booted it for emphasis. The empty boom echoed down the corridor to Jake's room and constricted my lungs. "Jake," I intoned, voice smooth and level for the cameras. "Status." A muted click replied on his walkie. "Remained in position," he said, steady. I counted 60 twice. "Perfect. Maintain that scheme." Karen shifted once more, careless and low, bulling through fog that swiped landmarks. She hit the couch corner, stumbled, steadied on the end table, and left a streak of UV on the wood. "Halt," I said, firm now. "Do not damage property. Do not go near the office." "The what?" She rasped, and then her hand closed around the steel cabinet, a black sentinel in the fog. Her shoulders tensed. She planted herself and charged. 2 steps, 1 breath. I swung down the curtain rod. The heavy drapery ripped free with a deafening crack and ballooned like a dark flood. She turned toward the noise, arms raised, too late. The cloth covered her head, shoulders, elbows, and converted her momentum into stumble and knee. "You're through," I told her, releasing the rod and using a firm forearm to push her down, Sunday pressure, the patient grasp of a father. "Let go. I had my hands open." The camera captured the entanglement and the undisturbed room surrounding us. Procedure, not punishment. Outside, porch lights flickered to life up and down the street. A dog yelped tentatively. The neighborhood came to life, lights flashing like a runway. Good. Witnesses were en route. I kept my knee loose and my lens fixed and let the house continue to tell the truth. "David!" Freddie yelled from the walk. "You having a 2 a.m. fire drill?" "If it's another raccoon, tell it to pay rent," shouted Mrs. Chen. "Not a raccoon," I said to make sure the porch microphones picked it up. "Intruder in. Be advised, keep your distance." Blue light poured down the street, a cruiser, early and nosy. The officer emerged from it, hand more on the pillar than the gun. "Evening," I called out. "Conflict of interest. I've called in the state police. Would you mind standing back?" He took in the line of phones, the mist at my feet, the woman flailing behind me. "Copy. I'll stand at the curb." Karen's voice tore through the haze. "Officer, it's Karen. Move him out of my way." He didn't budge. "Ma'am, I'm standing by." Freddie's camera rendered, "Nope." I held the pocket cam up higher. "Scene secure. Witnesses in position." Mrs. Chen sniffed. "And next time, raccoon, bring earplugs." A voice came out of the fog. "Neighbors, stand down. This is an emergency inspection. I have implied consent." "Implied by who?" Freddie called. "Your clipboard." Nervous laughter leaked out and then froze. Phones remained up. I hoisted the pocket cam to capture the porch and the gray cloud in back of me. "Timeline for the record," I declared, firm. 2:14 sensor. 2:16 child goes into panic. 2:17 shutters, fog, 2:19 siren. Intruder still within. Marty, the ham operator, pounded up in slippers, headset askew. "Scanner reports local unit 12 staged and on the way," he grumbled. "Also get a coat on." Noticed, I believe, breath misting in my doorway. Karen attempted a diversion. "Freddie, you park 2 in over the line each Sunday." "Who let that get by?" Freddie shrugged. "Me, I let it get by. It's my driveway." Mrs. Rodriguez advanced, chin up. "You threatened my cousin. This evening you entered a residence with a 10-year-old inside. That is not standards, that is danger." From within, a muffled click on Jake's walkie. "Dad's still good," he said, gazing through the lens. "Stay in the place." "Copy." He sounded small and sharp. The crowd thinned at the periphery. Karen felt through the mist, her hand closing on shutter steel with a hiss and launching a curse. "You can't catch me," she snarled. "You caught yourself," I told her. The house only spoke the truth. A beagle barked 2 houses away. Porch lights fell like dominoes. The curb officer held up a hand. "Everyone maintain space," he said, even-handed. "Record where you are." Marty took a slow pan. "This is my sweep shot." I lifted the cam. Scene continues calm. No weapons. "Intruder contained." Knight leaned forward. Then cleaner sirens replied in the distance. Freddie had already set out on his walk. His nosiness was a blessing. The audience had arrived. Phones accumulated on my lawn, a sea of little red lights. The fog hung back around us like the final moments of a show. My house resembled a crime scene. It might have been. Holding one knee firmly but lightly on Karen's back, I keyed the tablet to pull the front door shutter back. The rest of the shutters remained closed, locking her in. The front shutter rolled open with a soft whine, showing solid wood. The grumblings outside ceased. Everyone stood staring, mouths agape. "I am emerging," I shouted, tone controlled. "The intruder is pinned. I am unarmed. Please keep back from the door." I took my knee away. She had ceased to struggle. The audience had sucked the fight out of her. I stood, camera in hand, turned the deadbolt, and opened the door. The tableau on the lawn was surreal. A dozen pajama-clad neighbors in bathrobes, faces expressionless with worry, phones held aloft and recording. Of course, more witnesses, more evidence. Freddie was the leader of the pack. "David, what in the world?" he asked. "We believed you were being robbed." "In a sense, I was," I replied quietly, standing on the porch and maintaining space. "I didn't care to be accused of intimidation. I wanted to be perceived as the rational victim." I motioned the camera back into the room that was fogged when Karen shoved the curtain aside and slowly got to her feet. "That is Karen Blackman," I stated. "President of our HOA. She broke into my home at 2:14 this morning. I have footage of her opening an internal lock. She carried zip ties. She's a retired cop. I have her held. I'm waiting on the state police." Giggles ran through the crowd. Everyone knew Karen. They'd all gotten her notices, felt her presence. To see her ripped and exposed was a different story altogether. She stumbled in the doorway, humiliated and angry. "He's lying," she screamed, shaking pointing fingers. It was an emergency inspection. "He attacked me." Freddie eyed us, forehead creased. "An inspection at 2 a.m., she screamed. "He lured me in here. This is a setup." "Then you won't mind the cameras," I cut through her hysteria. "Or the dye on your hands." She looked down and froze, a flash of panic. Good old-fashioned bluff, sudden admission. I brandished my phone for all to see. "I'm not calling the local PD," I informed the phones. "She is a former member of that department. I don't believe in their impartiality. I'm calling state police. If local units come first, they'll wait for state on camera." Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out a small black light. Karen's hands glowed ghost white. A ripple of gasps. "Evidence, not emotion." I called the state barracks 50 meters down and placed the call on speaker. "State police, how can I assist?" A calm voice said. "This is David Mercer." I read my address. "I have a burglar in custody. Suspect named Karen Blackman, retired officer. Call for state support because of conflict of interest. She is unarmed but aggressive. Several civilian witnesses present." Brief hesitation. "Got it, sir. Units on the way. Stand down. Secure the area." I hung up. The quiet was heavy and real. It wasn't lasting. Sirens bifurcated into two crisp lines. Two troopers mounted the steps in measured boots. The young one looked at the shutter rails, the fog, my extended hands. "Sir, camera active?" I asked. "Intruder is Karen Blackman, former police, tagged with UV on latch and knob." He activated his body cam. The older trooper faced the curb. "Officer, thanks for waiting. Hold for witness statements." The local officer, relieved, replied, "Standing by." I backed up 2 steps, palms extended. "Minimal hold only, she's under the curtain." The older trooper dropped to his knees. "Ma'am, don't reach." Karen attempted rank rather than reach. "Trooper, listen to me. I am the president." "Hands," he replied, voice like a closing door. She complied. Under the flashlight, her palms pulsed faint purple. Mrs. Rodriguez on the porch. "Told you." "Ma'am, you're under arrest for burglary and criminal trespass." The trooper read rights slow and steady. His body cam mic recorded every word. Freddie whispered to phone and scene. Karen writhed toward the crowd, swiping out. "You will regret," the younger trooper interrupted. "Ma'am, move over here." Click. Cuffs. The fog thinned like the curtain at the end of a play. For the first time in months, my shoulders sagged. The cameras recorded it. I hoped they did. Karen glared at me, drawn and denuded of authority. She had constructed her life upon blue-line bonds. I had just taken it away from beneath her. Neighbors stood by, phones firm. They were no longer witnesses to a commotion. They were witnesses to a tyrant's disintegration. In the distance, another type of siren, state, puffed in closer. The following day resembled waking from a long, worried nightmare. The state police were quick and indifferent to Karen's hysterical appeals to victimhood. They put her lockpicks and zip ties in bags, confiscated my tapes, and illuminated her hands under their blacklight before seating her in the cruiser. But the break-in tape and physical evidence were just the beginning. The real bombshell quietly ticked in my pocket. I waited for lead Detective Miller to complete his first round of interviews. Then I stepped forward with my phone. "There's something else," I said. "I don't believe this is the first time she's pulled this, and I have the proof." I told him about the notice of violation, about how I used a very small slit on the notice and inserted a small tracker sticker that beeps every 5 minutes and sealed it. It was the size of a flea with a very small coin cell battery. It had been pinging its location to a secure server every 5 minutes for a week. Miller raised an eyebrow of doubt, but he came into the house with me to my computer. I opened up the tracking program. A map of our neighborhood came up, filled with a spiderweb of lines tracing Karen's movements. "This is her car." I pointed out a line that moved from her home to the HOA office to the grocery store. "Routine stuff. But this is her on foot." I restricted the results to display only data points taken between midnight and 500 a.m. The map came alive with a series of ominous routes. Night after night, she had taken a stroll down the neighborhood, not along the sidewalks, but along the intervals between houses, in the backyards, along the fence rows. Her routes lingered at certain homes. I saw the owners, the Rodriguez family, who had stood up to her, installing a religious statue in their yard. Mr. Henderson, the old man she was searching for a crack in his driveway and my house. She had driven around my house a dozen times in the past week, a shark cruising its water. "This indicates intent, a course of conduct," Miller said, his face somber. He was hunched in close to the screen now, all scornful doubt forgotten. "But the seriously cool part," I told him, "is this." I expanded the map. Once a day, oftentimes in late afternoon, the tracker would beep from 5 hours outside town, a self-storage unit, Unit 7B specifically. "She walks to that?" Miller asked. "No, I told her she'd have had the notice in her purse or bag. It followed her wherever she went." Miller scowled. He picked up his phone. An hour later, he returned with a search warrant. He and 2 other troopers arrived with me at the storage complex. The manager unlocked the unit with a bolt cutter. Inside was not cluttered with old appliances or holiday paraphernalia. It was an office, a stalker's control room. There was a big map of our whole subdivision pinned to a corkboard with red, yellow, green colored pins marking dozens of houses. My place had a big red pin in it. Miller raised his hand before any of us stepped over the lip. "Hold. Look." He nodded at a thumbtack camera hidden under the crossbar of the roll-up, a pepper grain lens eyeing the doorway. A red LED flashed every 2 seconds. "Passive," the junior trooper said. "Or uplink," I replied, nodding at a shoebox on the shelf with its corner shaved off, antenna wire protruding like a cat's whisker. Karen hadn't stockpiled. She'd created redundancy. "Don't let her phone home," Miller said. I produced a Myar sleeve out of my work backpack and kept it open as the trooper pinched the power lead on the box and dropped the entire mess into the pouch. The LED went out. The unit was warm under the foil, a little irritated heart falling silent. The fluorescent flickered to life beneath the motion sensor, casting long, chill shadows on the concrete. Dust motes moved in slow arcs. Somewhere down the hall, a radio hummed a country tune about a truck and a regret. The storage manager swallowed hard as if that would make him invisible. "No open drinks in the units," he told no one, then reconsidered and backed away. "Eyes up," Miller instructed him. He followed a line of red pins along a string to a second corkboard. "Clients, Phase 2. Below it, a foam tray stored key blanks, an etching pen, and a stapled printout. Leverage matrix, kids columns, mortgage, immigration, a loan." My name was under a loan before and under kids 3 times, circled hard enough to rip the paper. I breathed once, slow, and let the camera on my phone record it all. A metallic rattle shook through the wall on our right. Unit 7A. The roll-up slats bent, then stilled. The younger trooper stepped aside without glancing at Miller. Miller nodded in spite of that. "State police!" the trooper shouted, knuckles encasing the seam. "Silence!" A drier sheet odor seeped through the gap. "Too clean. Pop it," Miller told the manager. Bolt cutters chewed. The lock dropped. The door ascended with a hack of dust. Boxes few. Top one stamped HOA mailers in block lettering straight from a print shop. Below it, a banker's box taped over like a scab. The trooper eased it out. Audio recorders, 6 cheap, dates marked on them. One still ticking. He hit stop with the cap on a pen, then bagged it in the box as one. She's been logging conversations, Miller said. Or seating them, I said. On a strip of cork at eye level, 3 lanyards with plastic sleeves, visitor badges from our neighborhood pool, inkjet, and smugness. More in the rear, a folded A-frame sign. Emergency inspection. Do not touch in all capital letters. Slick, the manager whispered, and then leapt as something hummed in 7B, a phone forgotten on vibrate, fretting itself back and forth across the metal desk like a pinned beetle. The call ID appeared on the lock screen in gray. Arthur yawning. The name thrummed, halted, pulsed once more. Miller did not touch it. He only cocked his head at my camera, ensuring I caught the screen, the clock, the name. Habits are their own admission, he'd stated. Another vibration, this one beneath the workbench. The trooper crouched down, stretched, and produced a key fob remote. Garage door configuration with plastic smooth to smooth. Remote roller, he claimed. Stand away. He pushed it. 3 houses down, a door stuttered half an inch and fell. Miller's face flattened. She kitted kits, he claimed. For other doors, meaning other evenings, I claimed. The map confirmed. Red pins weren't random placements. There was a pattern, dates penciled on the margins. Arrows, small notes, and a neat cop hand. H will crease if threatened with lean. Our cousin, for use as leverage. Mercer write down all underlined twice. The younger trooper took down a small pelican case from the shelf and placed it on the table. Foam cutouts held 3 other trackers like the one I'd hidden. Only hers were labeled with names and house numbers. She played both sides of the board, he told me. Miller gestured to me. Tonight it stops playing, he said. Document and lift. I swept slowly, allowing the cold light and the nasty nicety of it all to do the talking, and then moved out of the way so the evidence texts could begin their painstaking, pitiless work. There were piles of files on a folding table. Miller picked one up. It was a dossier on my family. It contained my work hours, Jake's school schedule, pictures of my house from outside. It had copies of my social media status and, most chillingly, a clipping of Sarah's obituary. There were dossiers on every family with a red or yellow pin on the map. But the worst was in a locked metal footlocker. Within, they discovered a pile of empty arrest forms with missing serial numbers, seemingly taken from the local police station prior to her retirement. In addition, there were elaborate notes under a heading entitled Final Compliance Protocols. It was an intimidation playbook, and it identified how to threaten use of arrest, child services, and property liens in order to get residents to either comply with her demands or sell their houses. It was a conspiracy to defraud and terrorize a whole community, all orchestrated by one woman who could not bear to relinquish control. This is not just a good old-fashioned breaking and entering anymore, Miller said, rocking his head in disgust as he surveyed the appalling little room. This is a big-time felony investigation. The tracker had been my secret tool, a small piece of technology which had stealthily unpicked her whole secret life. Karen believed that she was the one spying on everybody else. But ultimately, her own fixation had left an impeccable digital trail straight to the center of her rotten little kingdom. The evidence was conclusive. News of the storage locker spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. The HOA board, Karen's rubber stamp for all these years, finally mustered the guts to call an emergency meeting in the community clubhouse. The clubroom was jammed, standing room only. All seats were occupied by a neighbor with a tale to tell. I brought Detective Miller along, and he was there officially to monitor. I wasn't there to give a speech. I didn't need to. I had brought my computer. Board members, a group of 3 nervous-looking individuals who had always shunned my eye contact in the past, attempted to conduct the meeting. They began with some rubbish about procedure rules, but the audience wasn't having it. "Let Mercer speak," someone shouted from the back. The chant was joined in by others. "Let him speak." The board president, a gentleman named Arthur, jiggled his microphone anxiously. "Mr. Mercer, do you have something to say to the board?" "I do," I replied, advancing towards the front of the room. I didn't make it up onto the stage. I merely stood in front of the stage, putting my laptop on a small table and plugging it into the projector in the room. I'm not here to discuss my lawn or my mailbox, I told them, my tone even, but ringing through the still room. I'm here to discuss what occurred at my residence 2 nights ago. And rather than tell you, I believe it would be best if I simply show you. I pressed play. The big screen behind the board came on. It was my laundry room camera footage. The room was quiet as they witnessed Karen Blackman crawl in my window at midnight. They witnessed her produce the lockpicks. They witnessed the zip ties in her hand. A collective intake of breath ran through the audience. I let the video continue. They witnessed me stand her down. They heard her feeble excuse about a water leak inspection. And then the lockdown. The shutters banging down, the fog creeping in. On the screen, the truth unfolded frame by frame. My voice steady as I reassured my son through his closed bedroom door. The tape revealed Karen, enraged, out of control, charging at my equipment, blinded by her own hubris. They witnessed me holding her back with nothing more than a curtain, using just minimal, carefully controlled force. And lastly, they saw through the eye of my digital camera as I pushed open the door to a porch filled with neighbors, their own bright phone screens recording the proof. When the video finished, the silence was oppressive. The room reeked with shock, outrage, and vindication. Then stood Mrs. Rodriguez, her voice quivering but resolute. She did the same to us, she said, gesturing toward the vacant chair where Karen should have been sitting. Not breaking in, but always watching. Always threatening. She once warned me she'd call immigration on my cousin because his truck was parked outside for 2 days. He's an American citizen. Mr. Henderson, weak but resolute, rose up next. She said if I didn't pay a $500 fine for a crack in my driveway, she'd put a lien on my house. My house is paid for. I've lived there 40 years. She said she'd see me on the street. One at a time, voices were raised. A torrent of tales spilled out. Threats, falsified fines, decades of harassment. Fear that had quietly brewed finally boiled over. The HOA board sat white and shocked. Their ignorance excuse melted in front of them. This wasn't angry homeowner number 1 anymore. This was a revolt, and the state police were listening from the back of the room. Arthur, president of the board, eventually stuttered to his feet. The board did not know the full extent of these actions. I motioned to remove Karen Blackman effective immediately as HOA president and hand over all records to the state police. The vote was unanimous. Relief flooded the room, broken by applause. Freddie raised his hand. Point of popcorn, what about all our fines? Arthur swallowed hard. Voided. Any citation not based on bylaws that were in force prior to Ms. Blackman's amendments is void. Mrs. Rodriguez pressed. And written apologies. Arthur blinked. And written apologies. Mr. Henderson rested his cane on the floor. And interest on the lien you threatened. A ripple of nervous laughter, followed by nods. From the rear, Marty the ham radio operator waved a notebook. For the record, I recorded her midnight sidewalk patrols on my scanner. Applause, please. Half the room applauded. Detective Miller took a stand. For criminal issues, bring me your videos, logs, dates. My office will liaison with the DA. A woman's voice trembled from the back. She made me take down my son's swing set. Can we reinstall it? Arthur getting his spine finally. Please do. And hereafter, Article 1 of our bylaws is easy. Don't be a jerk. Actual laughter this time. Freddie leaned in close to me. Think they'll name the park after you? No, I replied. Name it after Jake. The room applauded. I felt it warmly for the first time in years. Later that week, a judge viewed the tape. Karen's calculating burglary, her dishonesty, her savagely desperate attempts to cover it up, all irrefutable. Together with the proof from her storage shed, he declared her a flight risk and a threat to society. Bail denied. The system I had created to guard my son had liberated my whole neighborhood. Evidence had trumped her clout, her influence, her intimidation. She was at last trapped in one of her own boxes. Now the quiet in my home is different. It's not the oppressive quiet of sorrow. It's peace. Jake sleeps through the night. His bedroom door left unlocked. No drills, no fear. I even decommissioned the fortress I built. Shutters pulled back in, pins taken out, fog system turned off. Only the doorbell camera is still on, nothing more than any suburban dad would have. The house breathes again. Sunlight pours through the windows, and I don't jump when a car drives by. Karen Blackman took a plea deal. With mountains of evidence, the tracker reports, and testimony from dozens of neighbors, her attorney had no more tricks to play. She's doing time for felony stalking, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. The local police are under review by the state. Several officers who dismissed our cries now occupy administrative leave. Change is slow, but it's arriving. The HOA has been rebuilt from scratch. Mrs. Rodriguez is on the new board. We all tore up Karen's rulebook and crafted a plain set of bylaws based on decency and respect. The first resolution, each homeowner's right to peace and privacy, passed unanimously. I nailed it up myself. I still stay in my leather chair at night, but it's not as a watch anymore. It's an instant of peace. I think about Sarah a lot. She may not have appreciated the man I became for a time, the tactician who transformed our home into a stronghold, but she'd see. And I know that she'd adore the man I am today, a father who can finally sleep peacefully, knowing his boy is safe. The question that tormented me, how far does a man go to keep his own, has been answered. You go as far as you have to, but you engage with truth, not terror. With evidence, not force. You don't become the beast. You create a more intelligent trap and allow the beast to fall into it. Now my porch light remains on, not as a warning, but as a welcome. Our neighborhood is healing. My son sleeps upstairs, trapped in the innocent dreams of a 10-year-old boy who finally feels safe at home. And that is a victory worth everything. Peace is delicate. For a time, our neighborhood existed in that extraordinary golden quiet, the kind where laughter resurfaced in backyards. Children's bikes left in driveways weren't answered with threats, and neighbors waved rather than whispered. But nothing remains buried forever. 2 weeks following Karen's sentencing, I spotted a black SUV at the corner of our street. Same corner, same time, night after night. Engine off, tinted windows too dark according to state code. Initially, I convinced myself that it was coincidence. Perhaps a ride share, perhaps a visiting family member. But on the fourth night, I strolled past it, nonchalant as if taking a walk. The driver's head lowered sharply, too sharply, and the light of a phone screen glowed beneath the glass. That was not a neighbor. I left my porch light on, not as a warning this time, but as a test. Whoever was in that SUV didn't budge, didn't leave, didn't wave. They just stared. Later, Freddie phoned me. "You seeing that black Suburban down the block?" He snapped, his tone hard. "That ain't HOA. That's something other." Marty scanned his scanner. No plates were on file, no dispatch calls entered. Ghost car. The old fear I'd long buried roiled to the surface again. Not me this time, but Jake. That evening, I reinstalled the door sensors. Not fortress-grade systems, not quite yet. Just enough to let me know if someone stepped across a line. By Friday evening, rumors spread through the neighborhood. The SUV was not alone. Henderson caught a glimpse of a silver sedan following him after he left the pharmacy. Mrs. Rodriguez insisted someone had gone through her mail. A pattern was developing, one too recognizable: monitoring, intimidation, domination. Except it wasn't Karen. This was larger. Detective Miller took me for coffee on Saturday morning. His eyes were pinched, his words measured. "Karen wasn't alone acting," he explained. "The storage unit we got your help to locate? It contained more than files on your community. She had documents, names, addresses, bank information on individuals 3 towns away. Dozens of them. We're dealing with a network, not a single power-driven HOA president."